Let me tell you something powerful today. There's a realm you don't see. A world that watches you while you sleep. A world that studies your weaknesses, your habits, your fears. Witches don't waste time on the strong. They look for the broken, the distracted, the unguarded. But let me tell you something they don't want you to know. Even witches get scared. The question is, by what? You see, fear is the language of control in the kingdom of darkness. Witches use fear to manipulate, to paralyze, to bind. But there's a fear that they themselves cannot stand before. There's a power that shakes their covens, exposes their spells, and scatters their gatherings. And when that power shows up, they tremble. Because even witches, the masters of darkness, know there's something greater than darkness itself. You're about to discover what truly makes witches afraid. It's not holy water, it's not garlic, it's not silver crosses, it's not loud prayers. It's something deeper. A principle, a revelation, a light that cannot be hidden. Because light doesn't fight darkness, light simply shows up, and darkness runs. Do you know what truly terrifies a witch? Not your shouting, not your rituals, not even your church attendance. What shakes their kingdom is when a man or woman finally wakes up to who they really are. Because the moment identity is revealed, authority is restored. When you know who you are, you become unpredictable to darkness. You are no longer a puppet on their strings. You see, witches operate in deception. They manipulate perception, not reality. They make you believe you are powerless so they can remain powerful. But when revelation hits your spirit, and you discover that you are not just flesh and blood, but divinely authorized, their entire strategy collapses. The witch fears identity because identity exposes hierarchy. They understand that authority flows from identity. A king doesn't need to shout to command. His position speaks louder than his voice. When you understand that you are a child of the king, you stop begging heaven for help. You start speaking as one sent from it. That's why the enemy attacks your confidence, your worth, your mind. Because if he can keep you doubting yourself, he can keep you beneath your authority. Witches feed off insecurity. They thrive where identity is lost. That's why some people keep experiencing spiritual attacks. Not because witches are powerful, but because they are unaware of their own power. When you know who you are, you walk differently. You talk differently. You don't react to every shadow in the night. You understand that fear is not your portion. Authority is. Even the witch knows when she's in the presence of one who carries identity. Because light doesn't need to announce itself. It simply reveals everything around it. You see, in the realm of the spirit, names carry weight. Identity is your spiritual name tag. When a witch sends a curse, it has to find a name, an address, a target. But when your identity is hidden in divine authority, they can't locate you. You become invisible to their assignments. That's why Scripture says, your life is hidden. Hidden means covered, concealed, untraceable. The witch can't curse what she cannot find. Many people fear witches because they think witches see everything. But the truth is, they only see what's exposed. Identity hides you in authority. When you know who you are, your very presence becomes warfare. Witches feel it. Darkness senses it. You don't need to cast out demons. Your awareness itself casts them out. Because identity carries atmosphere. That's why the witch fears revelation. When truth enters a man, darkness loses ownership. They can't control what they can't deceive. The witch knows, once you discover your original design, their contracts are void. Their spells break, their authority expires. Because the moment light appears, the illusion ends. So when a witch sees a man or woman walking in full awareness of who they are, she trembles. Because she knows this one cannot be manipulated. This one cannot be cursed. This one cannot be touched. Why? Because this one carries the seal of heaven. The greatest fear of witches is not your religion, it's your revelation. They're not afraid of your rituals, they're afraid of your realization. When you stand in the fullness of your divine image, you remind them of what they lost. You remind them of authority they traded for rebellion. You walk as a mirror of divine power, and mirrors are dangerous to darkness because they reflect truth. So the next time fear whispers, remember this. Witches tremble before identity. They fear the one who knows they are light, the one who knows they are chosen, the one who knows that darkness cannot stand before truth, because even witches get scared, but not of you, not of your shouting, not of your rituals. They get scared of the you who finally knows who you really are. That's when the tables turn. That's when fear leaves your camp and enters theirs. That's when power shifts. Because the moment you remember who you are, everything in darkness remembers who it isn't. Do you know what else makes witches tremble? It's not thunder, not fire, not the loudness of your prayers. It's the quiet power of a life governed by purity and truth. Because purity is not weakness. Purity is authority under control. Truth is not just words, it's a force that pierces through illusion. When a man or woman chooses to walk in purity and live by truth, they become untouchable in the spirit realm. You see, witches survive by deception, manipulation, and hidden motives. Their greatest weapon is the lie. So when they encounter someone whose life is rooted in truth, they have nowhere to hide. Witches fear purity because purity is clarity. It's the condition where your spirit is so clean that you can see clearly. You discern motives. You perceive atmospheres. You know when something is off even before it speaks. You cannot be easily fooled because deception cannot survive in the light of truth. And that's what witches hate, light. Because purity is not just a moral standard, it's a spiritual weapon. It exposes what others can't see. It makes your presence uncomfortable to darkness. A pure heart is a dangerous heart to the enemy. It's the kind of heart that hosts divine power without corruption. You see, when a person's motives are clean, their authority carries weight. Heaven trusts them. The reason some people pray and nothing happens is because their hands are dirty while asking for power. But the moment you cleanse your heart, truth flows through you like a river that cannot be stopped. Purity attracts power because it aligns you with divine order. When witches try to attack a pure person, their spells backfire. Why? Because purity creates a shield. Truth becomes your armor. Darkness can't stick to what's clean. It slides off. The witch knows that. That's why she works day and night to corrupt your purity, to tempt you, to distract you, to plant compromise in your soul. Because if she can get you to live in secret sin, she can open the door she needs to enter. The real war is not over your body, it's over your integrity. A pure life is like a mirror that reflects the glory of God without distortion. Every act of deceit, every secret compromise, every lie you tolerate smudges that mirror. And the more it's smudged, the less light you reflect. That's when witches get bold, when your reflection dims. But when you choose truth, when you refuse to bow to corruption, your reflection becomes blinding. Your very presence exposes darkness around you. The problem today is that people want power without purity. They want influence without integrity. But you can't carry true power when your hands are dirty. Power without purity is witchcraft in disguise. It's control, it's manipulation. But when your heart is right, power flows effortlessly. Because truth doesn't need to manipulate, it just is. Witches understand spiritual laws better than most believers. They know that every form of darkness operates on legal ground. That's why they look for openings, doors of compromise, windows of deception, cracks in your character. A lie here, a secret there, a hidden habit, and suddenly your covering weakens. They can sense it. But when you walk in purity and truth, every door is sealed. You become a walking fortress. No curse, no spell, no incantation can locate you. Purity is not perfection, it's intention. It's the consistent choice to stay aligned with truth, even when no one is watching. It's the quiet decision to say, I refuse to play with darkness. It's when your spirit becomes allergic to sin. The more you walk in purity, the more you hate deception. The more you love truth, the more you see through falsehood. That's why witches can't stand you when you are pure. They can't manipulate you, they can't tempt you, and they can't predict you. Witches thrive in confusion, but truth brings clarity. Witches survive in secrecy, but purity brings exposure. When a pure person walks into a room, the atmosphere shifts. Hidden things start coming to light. People get uncomfortable. Darkness becomes restless. Because purity is not passive, it's confrontational. It silently challenges everything impure around it. Witches know that if they can't make you sin, they can't make you lose. That's why they will send distractions, emotional traps, seductive opportunities, anything to stain your purity. But the moment you say no, the moment you guard your heart and your motives, you break their power. Because their energy feeds on corruption, but purity starves them. The truth is, witches are not afraid of your religion. They're afraid of your righteousness. They don't fear your titles. They fear your integrity. They fear the one who refuses to lie, to cheat, to compromise, to bend truth for convenience. They fear the one who stands firm even when no one claps. Because truth is eternal. It doesn't need applause to remain powerful. When you walk in purity and truth, your life becomes a statement. You don't even have to say much. Your presence speaks. Your silence convicts. Your decisions preach. And every time you choose truth over convenience, light over darkness, you remind witches that they no longer own the night. You remind them that truth still reigns. So what do witches really fear? They fear the one who lives clean, the one who refuses to hide behind lies, the one who won't trade truth for temporary pleasure, because such a person carries a light that darkness cannot comprehend. That's when witches tremble, not because you shouted, but because you lived right. Do you know what else shakes the realm of darkness to its core? It's not just prayer, not just fasting, not just the quoting of scriptures. It's the atmosphere of genuine worship. You see, witches fear worship more than warfare, because worship is not an act of defense, it's an act of dominion. Warfare reacts to the enemy, but worship ignores him. Worship shifts your focus from the battle to the throne. And the moment your focus shifts, your authority rises. Witches know that when a man or woman truly worships, they lose access to that person's atmosphere. True worship isn't about songs, it's about surrender. It's not about music, it's about intimacy. It's when your spirit becomes a frequency heaven recognizes. Witches operate through vibration, chants, sounds, spells, but worship creates a frequency that cancels theirs. When your heart opens in pure adoration, every demonic sound gets silenced. Because worship re-establishes order, it declares who truly rules. And when God is enthroned through your worship, every witchcraft throne begins to crumble. Witches fear worship because it draws the presence of God, and His presence is their suffocation. They can't breathe where He reigns. They can't operate where He is exalted. That's why when a worshiper enters a room, the atmosphere shifts. The air becomes too heavy for darkness to dwell. They know something powerful. Worshippers are untouchable, because worshippers carry presence. You can't curse presence. You can't bind presence. You can't manipulate presence. It's not an object, it's a living force. You see, witches depend on distraction. Their power is amplified in chaos. But worship brings stillness. Worship introduces peace, and peace is a weapon. Peace is not the absence of war, it's the manifestation of divine control. When your heart worships, you declare to darkness, you are no longer in charge here. That's why witches hate when people truly worship, because it's the only place where their noise can't reach. Worship is more than a moment, it's a posture. It's the alignment of your heart with divine truth. When you worship, you synchronize with heaven's rhythm. You begin to see like God, feel like God, and speak like God. And that's dangerous to witches, because they thrive on distortion. But worship restores clarity. It pulls you out of the fog of fear and into the light of revelation. A worshiper carries fire. Not the fire that burns bodies, but the fire that consumes darkness. When you live a life of worship, your presence itself becomes a burning altar. Witches sense that heat. They know not to cross it. You don't even need to rebuke them. Your worship does the rebuking. That's why when you worship sincerely, suddenly you feel the air clear, confusion leaves, fear melts. Because the witchcraft that was circling you just lost its grip. You see, worship is not emotional release. It's spiritual warfare in disguise. The devil understands that. That's why he always tries to corrupt it. He'll make you think worship is entertainment. He'll make you think it's about the melody, the crowd, the feeling. But genuine worship is raw spirit. It's when words fade and only awe remains. That's where real power flows. That's where authority speaks without sound. When you lift your hands in true worship, you're not showing weakness. You're signaling surrender, and surrender is strength in the kingdom, because the one who surrenders to God becomes ungovernable by darkness. Witches fear those hands lifted in purity, those voices raised without agenda, those hearts bowed in truth, because in that moment they can't touch you. Not because of what you're saying, but because of what you've become. You've become a dwelling place, and they cannot invade where heaven lives. The secret is this: worship transforms you. It renews your nature. It rewires your spirit. It removes your earthly frequency and replaces it with heaven's sound. You stop echoing fear and start releasing faith. You stop reacting to darkness and start radiating light. And light doesn't debate with darkness, it dominates it. That's why witches tremble when you worship, because they know your worship is not just praise, it's power. A witch can study your name, trace your bloodline, plant objects in your path, but she can't stand in your worship, because worship creates an invisible shield that even demons respect. That's why Paul and Silas in prison didn't beg, they didn't complain, they worshiped. And the moment they did, the atmosphere broke open. Chains fell, doors opened. The natural submitted to the supernatural. That's what worship does. It shakes foundations, both seen and unseen. Witches lose grip in worship. Their confusion begins when you stop focusing on them and start exalting Him. Because when your eyes rise above, everything below loses its power. Worship recalibrates your authority. It reminds the universe who really reigns. When your heart bows before the throne, witches know their influence ends. Because worship shifts the power balance. It dethrones fear and enthrones faith. And so, when a witch senses a true worshiper, she backs away. Not because you're loud, but because you're aligned. You carry an atmosphere that burns her schemes before they manifest. You've become an altar that can't be defiled, a temple that can't be invaded, a voice that can't be silenced. That's why witches are terrified of genuine worship. Because in that moment, heaven invades earth, and the kingdom of darkness runs out of air to breathe. If there is one thing witches dread beyond all else, it is the power of the spoken word released from the mouth of someone who understands their divine authority. Because the spirit realm does not respond to emotions, it responds to words. Every kingdom operates by decrees, and the kingdom of God is no different. When a man or woman opens their mouth with authority and declares truth, it rearranges the atmosphere. Witches know this. They operate by words too. Their chants, spells, and incantations are all perverted copies of a divine principle that words create reality. But when someone speaks under divine authority, their words don't just travel, they manifest. You see, witches don't fear noise, they fear authority. They fear a voice that carries weight in the spirit. There are people who talk, and there are people who speak. Talking comes from the lips, but speaking, true speaking, comes from the spirit. When your words are born out of revelation and relationship with God, they carry creative power. You don't just describe what you see, you create what you say. That's why witches fear the voice of a believer who knows who they are. Because when that voice speaks, everything hidden in darkness is exposed. From the beginning, everything that exists came into being through words. Light didn't appear because God thought it. It appeared because God said it. Let there be light. And there was light. That's how powerful your words are when they align with divine will. You don't need to fight darkness. You simply need to speak light. Witches fear that kind of speech because they operate in darkness. Light spoken through authority instantly nullifies their power. The danger is when people don't understand what their words carry. Many destroy their own atmosphere with careless speech. They say, "I'm weak," and their spirit agrees. They say, "I'm cursed," and their environment aligns. Words build or break, bless or bind. Witches understand this law. That's why they use curses. Because a curse is simply a word designed to produce fear and limitation. But the moment you understand the authority of your own voice, curses lose their target. Because your voice is louder in the realm of the Spirit than theirs. When your speech becomes saturated with divine truth, you shift from speaking about situations to speaking into them. You stop describing storms and start commanding peace. You stop begging for protection and start declaring victory. Authority doesn't ask, it announces. It doesn't plead, it proclaims. That's why witches cannot stand in the presence of one who has found their voice. Because your words become fire in the unseen world, fire that consumes the very roots of their operations. Witches use repetition to activate energy, but when a righteous person speaks, even once with faith, heaven backs it. You don't need rituals, you need revelation. You don't need formulas, you need faith. And when your faith fills your words, those words become law. Heaven and earth respond. That's why Scripture says life and death are in the power of the tongue. It's not poetry, it's legal language. You legislate reality with your tongue. Witches fear your words when they're born from conviction. They know when you're guessing and when you're commanding. They know when you're quoting verses and when you're releasing authority. Authority doesn't shout. It simply knows. That's why kings don't argue. They decree. When your spirit knows its position, your words carry that certainty. The moment you open your mouth, darkness knows it's over. The devil's greatest strategy is to silence you, to keep you quiet, timid, uncertain. Because as long as you're silent, he still has space to speak. Every time fear tells you, don't say it. That's the witch's greatest hope, that you'll stay quiet while they whisper. But the moment you open your mouth and speak life, their whispers die. Because your voice interrupts their spell. When you speak under divine authority, even creation responds. Your words align people, shift events, close demonic gates, open divine doors. You don't need to wait for a sign. You are the sign. You are the living evidence that the word still becomes flesh. That's why witches can't handle people who speak truth with conviction. They know your mouth can destroy years of their planning in seconds. A witch may spend nights chanting over a situation, but one sentence spoken from your mouth in alignment with heaven can undo it all. One, it is written, from your lips is enough to dismantle the strongest spell. Because your authority doesn't come from volume, it comes from position. You are seated above what they serve beneath, and words from above always overrule words from below. Witches don't fear your silence. They love it, but they fear your declaration. They fear when you open your mouth and speak not as a victim, but as a vessel. When you command light, they lose ground. When you speak peace, their confusion begins. When you declare truth, their lies collapse. And when you decree life, every curse breaks. So never underestimate your words. Every word you speak carries weight in a realm you can't see. You can change nations, break cycles, heal generations, not through shouting, but through speaking with authority. Because the one who truly knows the power of their words doesn't need to fight witches. Their very voice makes witches flee. One of the things that terrifies witches more than anything else is a disciplined and focused mind, because in the realm of the spirit, control begins in the mind. If they can't capture your mind, they can't control your life. Witches understand that the greatest battlefield is not in the air, it's in the thoughts. They don't attack your body first. They attack your focus. They want to scatter your attention, because a distracted person is a defeated person. But when your mind is disciplined, when your focus is fixed, you become a weapon they cannot disarm. Witches operate through suggestion and imagination. They plant seeds of fear, confusion, and doubt in your thoughts, and then they wait for you to water them with belief. They understand that what you meditate on, you manifest. If they can get you to think wrong, they can make you live wrong. That's why the first thing they fear is someone who guards their mind. A mind trained to think with intention, a mind anchored in truth, is a fortress that no witch can penetrate. A disciplined mind doesn't react, it responds. It doesn't get carried away by emotions or by the noise around it. It filters thoughts through truth before accepting them. Witches can't stand that kind of person because their tricks rely on emotional instability. They send confusion and expect you to panic. They whisper lies and expect you to believe them. But when your mind is focused, you see their deception before it takes root. You see, focus is not just mental, it's spiritual. What you focus on determines what grows in your life. If your focus is scattered, your energy is wasted. But when your focus is aligned with divine purpose, your life becomes concentrated power. Which is fear concentration, because it's impossible to manipulate a focused person. Their spells can't land, their words can't take root, their distractions lose grip. Because a focused mind is like a sword, sharp, steady, and precise. The enemy knows he can't defeat you unless he first distracts you. That's why every time you're on the edge of breakthrough, something shows up to steal your attention. A misunderstanding, a temptation, a crisis, anything to make you lose focus. But a disciplined mind sees beyond the noise. It knows how to stay still in the middle of chaos. That stillness isn't passivity, it's control. It's the calm that comes from clarity. Witches thrive where people are mentally lazy. They send confusion where people refuse to think. But a person who disciplines their thoughts, who knows how to silence fear and feed faith, becomes invisible to them. Because you cannot bind what doesn't react. Witches need emotional permission to operate. They can't curse you unless you agree with their fear. But when your mind is anchored, there's no agreement, no entry point. Discipline of the mind means learning to master what you allow in. It's learning to guard the gates of your imagination. Because your imagination is a womb. Whatever enters it has the potential to become real. Witches fear those who protect that womb. They fear those who refuse to allow dark images, lies, or suggestions to build residence in their thoughts. When your imagination is pure, your manifestations are powerful. A focused mind is a dangerous thing, because it doesn't just think, it creates. It channels energy toward purpose. It speaks intentionally. It acts with clarity. Witches can't predict focused people, because they're not moved by emotion. They're moved by mission. They don't chase noise, they chase vision. And when vision governs your mind, confusion loses its voice. Witches often send dreams, illusions, and thoughts designed to weaken your will. They try to convince you that you're powerless, forgotten, or cursed. But a disciplined mind recognizes the lie immediately and replaces it with truth. That's why meditation on truth is so powerful. It's mental warfare. Every time you renew your mind, you rewrite your reality. Every time you choose truth over fear, you destroy their programming. The reason witches hate a disciplined person is because such a person cannot be possessed, cannot be controlled, and cannot be deceived. You see, possession doesn't begin with demons entering bodies. It begins with ideas entering minds. When the wrong thought takes root, the wrong spirit finds a home. But when your mind is guarded, you don't entertain what contradicts truth. You don't argue with lies, you silence them. Witches fear thinkers. They fear people who pause before reacting, who question before believing, who discern before deciding. Because discernment is a weapon of the mind. It separates signal from noise, truth from illusion. A focused mind is the most dangerous mind in the spiritual realm, because it doesn't just observe reality, it defines it. So guard your thoughts, protect your focus. Don't let anyone or anything rent space in your mind that doesn't belong there. Every thought is a seed, and every seed becomes a forest if you feed it long enough. The devil and his witches can't plant what you refuse to water. When your mind is anchored in purpose, when your focus is fixed on truth, witches can't find a doorway. Their spells bounce off your peace. Their confusion drowns in your clarity. Their lies melt in your light. Because a disciplined and focused mind is not just strong, it's spiritually invincible. There's something witches can't stand, something that breaks their rhythm, interrupts their rituals, and dissolves their assignments. It's not the act of prayer they fear, it's the consistency of prayer that flows from relationship, not ritual. Because prayer that is mechanical has no fire, but prayer that comes from intimacy carries presence. Witches don't tremble when you recite words, they tremble when heaven recognizes your voice. You see, the problem with many people is that they treat prayer like a transaction instead of a relationship. They pray only when they need something, or when they feel afraid, or when trouble rises. But witches know that kind of prayer doesn't carry weight, because it's not backed by consistency. It's like a door that only opens occasionally. It squeaks, it's stiff, it's hard to move. But when you pray daily, faithfully, relationally, that door stays open, communication flows, presence remains. And witches hate open doors to heaven, because it closes every door to them. Prayer born from relationship isn't loud, but it's alive. It's not about how long you pray, but about how connected you are. When you build intimacy with God through prayer, your voice gains authority in the Spirit. Every time you speak, your words carry the scent of His presence, and witches recognize that scent. They smell it before you even arrive. It's the fragrance of someone who's been with God. That's why witches fear prayerful people, not just people who pray. There's a difference. A prayerful person lives in a state of communion. They don't just talk to God in emergencies, they walk with Him in normalcy. Their spirit is tuned to His frequency, and that frequency disturbs every dark signal. When you walk in prayer like that, you don't have to announce your warfare. Your atmosphere does it for you. Witches understand consistency because that's how their craft operates. They chant at specific hours, they repeat words, they build energy through persistence. But when a child of God prays with consistency, it breaks every cycle of darkness, because spiritual consistency creates dominance. The spirit realm respects persistence. The one who stays connected always outranks the one who comes occasionally. That's why witches don't fear occasional prayers. They fear lifestyles of prayer. Prayer from relationship has rhythm. It's like breathing. You don't remind yourself to breathe, you just do it. In the same way, those who live in prayer don't struggle to connect. It's natural. They can be driving, cooking, working, and still communing. Their spirit never disconnects. That's what witches can't touch. A spirit that is always awake. They rely on slumber. They wait for you to go spiritually offline. But when your spirit is constantly aware, you're never offline. You're always in signal. A relationship-based prayer life builds authority over time. The more you pray, the more sensitive you become. The more sensitive you become, the faster you discern what's happening around you. Prayer sharpens discernment. You start feeling atmospheres, hearing warnings, seeing patterns. Witches hate that because they lose the element of surprise. You see their schemes before they form. You sense their shadows before they manifest. And the moment you sense it, you counter it in prayer, not out of fear, but out of authority. Many people think witches fear prayer because it's loud. No, witches fear prayer because it's consistent, pure, and relational. A loud prayer without intimacy is just noise in the air, but a whisper from someone who walks with God shakes realms. Because the power of prayer is not in the volume of your voice, it's in the authenticity of your connection. Heaven doesn't respond to repetition, it responds to relationship. When you have that kind of relationship through prayer, you don't need to beg for help. Help recognizes you. The angels assigned to you are familiar with your voice. You don't need to introduce yourself every time you pray. Heaven already knows your tone, your rhythm, your sound, and that's what witches dread. They dread people who have a familiar sound in heaven. Because if heaven knows you, hell fears you. Witches can sense when someone prays out of fear and when someone prays out of love. Fearful prayers react to the enemy, but relational prayers reveal God. And where God is revealed, darkness disappears. Witches can't stay in atmospheres where presence is constantly sustained. That's why they target prayerless seasons in people's lives. They know that if they can exhaust you, distract you, or make you feel too busy to pray, your covering starts to thin. But when prayer becomes your breath, fatigue loses its power. Distraction becomes irrelevant. A consistent prayer life builds momentum. Every moment of prayer adds to your spiritual storage. Even when you don't feel powerful, your consistency builds strength in the background. Witches know that too. That's why sometimes just before breakthrough, they attack your desire to pray. They know your power is being multiplied quietly. But if you push through, if you remain faithful even when you don't feel it, you come out carrying authority that can't be countered. Prayer from relationship changes your identity. It makes you a carrier of presence. It builds boldness in your spirit. You start speaking with confidence. You stop reacting to fear. You walk into rooms and atmospheres shift. You lay hands and oppression breaks. Not because of what you said, but because of what you carry. That's what witches fear. Not your words, not your rituals, but your presence. Because when you live in prayer, you live in power. And witches know they cannot curse what stays connected to the source.